Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing another video on my Assistant Psychologist Interview experience. This was my second interview and unfortunately I didn't get it. I filmed my reaction after I found out that I didn't get it, and I think it's really important that everyone kind of sees the reality of what it's like trying to find a job after uni, and more specifically trying to get an assistant psychologist job. So let's put that clip in now. Please be kind to me in the comments. This is me being really vulnerable with you guys, and yeah, just be kind. Like, you have to understand that this is my dream and I'm tired, guys. I've been applying since May. It's now November when I'm filming this and I still haven't got a job, so just be kind, okay? So I don't know if this bit is going to make it into the video, but I just wanted to show the reality of applying for jobs and not getting them, because it just is like, it is just so upsetting when you don't get it. I managed to hold it all in for the 5-minute phone call I just had, getting my feedback. But yeah, I just feel like people don't show this side of the whole job process or after uni. And it's tough. Bear in mind, I graduated in May and it's now November and I still don't have a job. And this is the second interview I've been on and didn't get it. But the feedback was really good, which I'll go through when I'm in a better way. It's just hard. Like, firstly, rejection in general is hard, like in everything, but I think when you've applied to so many jobs and only have had 2 interviews and it feels like you've only got this chance, it's really just heartbreaking. And I'm just tired. But this is the reality, guys, of trying to get a job after uni. So I am an emotional person normally, so this is no surprise, and people probably don't cry after getting rejected from jobs, but I really thought that could have been the one. Just wanted to show my real reaction. I mean, I feel like loads of people show their reaction on getting their jobs, but I don't know if many people show their reaction when they don't get a job. So here I am. To bring you the reality. Life goes on and I'm gonna keep trying, that's the main thing. Had my little cry now and it's gonna be fine. So as you can see, I was pretty upset when I found out, but in this video I don't want to focus on the negative. I want to share with you guys the questions that were asked in the second interview and the feedback that I got from this interview. Now, the feedback that I got in this interview was so in-depth and so useful, not only for me but for you guys as well. I found out how they score it. Yes, they score it, they use points. I did not know this. And how you get those high points. So let's get started. This interview was for a memory service / older people psychology team. My role would have been predominantly focused on memory assessments, and then that's kind of it. It didn't really look much into the treatment for the individuals, which now looking back I'm kind of happy that I didn't get it in that way, because obviously I wanted the job, but it would have been interesting to be in a team where you do treatment as well as assessments. So when I went in, it was a panel interview. There were 2 people there, both psychologists. Before I went in, they gave me a case study to read over, and then I also knew that there would be a role play during this interview, as well as like the normal questions that you get. The case study was basically about a husband and wife. The man has been part of the memory service and the wife doesn't feel comfortable with him driving anymore, and they've got a trip coming up, and she's thinking of hiding the keys from him, but she's worried that he's going to be verbally aggressive. So the question at the bottom of it was, what would you do in this situation and what clinical issues are salient, I think was the word that they used. With that one I mentioned about safeguarding because of the fact that she's worried that he's going to be verbally abusive or aggressive. Like, to me, you wouldn't really be worried about that unless there's been problems with that in the past, maybe. So I said I'd explore that a bit further. Also to do an assessment of his mental capacity so that we know whether he is actually capable of making these decisions himself, because obviously if he can, then why would she do that? It's a bit unfair. So yeah, that's a brief overview of how I answered that question, and I think I did it well, and I enjoyed that there was a case study. For the role play, I had to pretend that I was speaking to the wife of a man with dementia, so she would be his primary caregiver. She is feeling a bit isolated and a bit stressed, and so I had to just have a conversation with her around that. With this, from what I got from the feedback, they said that the main thing that they're looking for in these situations are open-ended questions, which I did, and also to normalise how they were feeling. What they also said was that you do need to kind of try not to show your nerves as much. When I'm nervous, well, actually in general in life I speak quite quickly, but when I'm nervous especially, it sounds like I'm on fast forward half the time. So they said that came across, and that kind of brought down my scoring on that specific scenario in the interview. I'm going to go through the questions now that they asked really quickly, and then I'll go through the scoring and stuff. The first question that they asked was, what drew you to the job? So for this one, they're obviously looking for your passion, which I did, but what they said that I missed out was expanding that further and being reflective and saying how this experience would help me progress later on in life for the clinical doctorate. And I didn't mention that. So a lot of my feedback was about expanding answers and being more reflective. She gave examples like that one where I could have mentioned clinical training. So at least now I kind of know what they're looking for in terms of being reflective. The next question was, give an example of a time you had to be assertive. And this was kind of hard because being assertive isn't always good, you know? I feel like it's seen quite negative a lot of the time because all that means is it involves conflict. For this one I mentioned a time at the care home where I didn't agree with how things were being done. I felt like care was more of a checklist thing rather than a person-centred. Yes, I mentioned that and how I kept pushing for that person-centred care to be more of a focus. They didn't give any feedback about that question, so I'm assuming it wasn't awful. The next question was, name a time when attention to small detail helped the quality of your work. Now for this one, like, I kind of didn't know what to say, and with all of these questions I had not prepared for them. I prepared a load of questions, even more questions than my last interview, and none of them came up. So that just shows you, like, preparation sometimes can't help you that much. But yeah, so for this one I said something along the lines of when I've written reports, like paying attention to the person's background and their history really helped me increase the quality of the reports I was writing, because I feel like when you write a report it can sound quite repetitive, but with these additional bits of information about the person, then it makes it a bit more unique to each person, you know? And I also mentioned about working with people with challenging behaviour. I always have to be on the lookout for like triggers, and those are really small, minute things that normally you wouldn't pay attention to, such as a bit of ripped paper. That's a trigger for the girl that I support currently, and day-to-day life you don't look out for those things, and so by paying attention to those small details, my quality in the way that I care goes up because there are less challenging behaviours, hopefully, you'd hope. Another question was, name a time where your compassion helped a client or patient. I did not know how to answer this one. Like, this one is the one that I think I struggled with the most, because I'm not going to lie, in my head I kind of struggled to define compassion and what it means, and obviously I know I'm compassionate because I've worked in care for the past 4 years, you know. You have to be compassionate in order to get through those challenging times. But when I think about it now, guys, I was really stupid. Compassion was one of the trust values, so make sure you go over those before your interview. For that one, I can't actually remember what I said. Oh, when it came to challenging behaviour with the girl I support, kind of even when she's trying to attack us, trying to put myself in her shoes and realise that it must be really frustrating for her to not be able to communicate her needs. Now, I don't know if I answered that question right, so if anyone does have any ideas on how they would answer the questions that I'm mentioning, please leave them down below, because it won't only help me, but hopefully some other people who are watching this video. Another question was, why is supervision with a clinical psychologist important? This one always comes up in interviews. I've realised it's all about self-reflection and just obviously saying like what you can learn from the clinical psychologist. And the final question they asked was, if you had a magic wand, what would you change about this interview? Right, guys, when I heard this, I was like, had to put my thinking cap on. I really did, because I was worried that if I pointed out loads of flaws, then that would kind of direct them to like what I've done wrong in the interview. And so I just answered in the most natural way as possible. Just went for what came instinctually to me, which was that I do believe that everything happens for a reason, and so I think I did my best in the interview itself, and so I wouldn't change anything apart from my nerves, I said. I was worried about that answer. As soon as I left, I started overthinking that question in particular, and I was right in overthinking that, because when I got my feedback, they said that what they're looking for in that question is that ability to self-reflect on the spot. And so she said, saying something like, I think I did really well, but I wish I spoke more in depth about this, this and this. And she said it's also an opportunity for you to add in any extra bits that you can think of or that you thought of throughout your interview. Those are all the questions that I can remember. I tried to write them down as soon as I got out of the interview. One thing that did help me in terms of preparation was the fact that I prepared for questions about safeguarding and the Mental Capacity Act, which obviously really helped me for my case study, because I mentioned those two things, and without those two things I don't know what I would have mentioned. Really read up on the Mental Capacity Act and safeguarding, because that is a big part of your job. In the caring field, safeguarding and Mental Capacity Act are very important. So now for the bit that you guys have been waiting for, because this is a really interesting bit. This is the feedback that I received, but it was very detailed. In total, there were 87 applicants who submitted their application online, and out of those 87, 11 people got shortlisted for interviews. Overall, my application, my written application, she said, was written really well. On this application, they had additional questions. So you know how normally on NHS website it says your supporting information? This one also stated in the job description, you must answer these 3 questions in order to be shortlisted. So I don't know who wouldn't do that, but I did, and they said those answers were really good. They also said that I was really well presented and that I was smiley and bubbly. So with each question, they score it between 0 and 3. 3 being the highest. And then all the scores are added up, and then that's how they choose their assistants. Which to me is crazy, because imagine if you're 1 point away from getting that job. It just seems so frustrating. They said that my answers were really strong. Most of them got a 2, but in order for me to get that 3 mark, I needed to be more reflective and go into more depth with each of my questions. They said I could have taken a bit longer to answer each question, which again is very interesting, because I'm always worried about waffling on, and so that's why I tend to keep my answers nice and short and sweet and concise in interviews, because I thought that's what they wanted. I thought that's what they looked for in interviews, but apparently not. She literally said to me, don't be scared to expand more on your answers. It was all about developing, really. Oh, there was also a question about MDT working, and again she said to develop more. Yeah, the MDT question was just something like, what are some challenges about working in MDT? And I said communication, but they were looking for a bit more, because they wanted like 2 points maybe. So now I know. She also highlighted that in assistant interviews there will always be questions about supervision and MDT, so that's nice to know in concrete that those always come up. She literally said, I've written down here what she said in quotation marks, say more, you won't be marked down. She said the main thing to get those 3s instead of 2s was to develop my answers more, with that obviously being more reflective. And I just think it's nice how she gave me some examples of how to be reflective, such as mentioning the clinical doctorate. At least now I know that I'm allowed to waffle on a little bit, obviously within some kind of focused way, you know? So those were all the questions that I got asked in this interview and the feedback, which I think is really interesting. Again, if you guys have any suggestions of how to answer the questions, please put them down below, because we all need to support each other. I think that some of the resources out there for the interviews are quite outdated now. We need to start a community of people who are aspiring to be psychologists to get together and help each other out, because it is a tough field to get in, guys, and we need support. As you can see, like, it does take a toll on you when you keep getting no's and you keep getting rejected, but I really wanted to show you guys the reality of what it means to try for this career path, because I think a lot of YouTube is always highlighting the great things in life, and that's just not realistic. I think it's quite unfair for people to be sat at home, like myself, watching videos of I got the job, yay, like, and not seeing what they've gone through before and how many jobs they've applied for and how many interviews they haven't got. Thankfully, I've got an interview next week, and I don't know, guys, hopefully it'll be the one, we'll see. I've definitely learnt a lot from this interview, and I feel like with every interview I'm getting better. So pray for your girl here. If you guys have any interviews coming up, good luck, and I really do wish you the best. Don't stress out, because I've realised now sometimes preparation just isn't enough. You need to have the ability to be reflective. I think that is the one thing that they are looking for, like really looking for. I'm going to have a look at how to be more reflective, so if I find anything, maybe I'll make a video on it if you guys are interested. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe. I don't know, it's nice to know that people want to watch my videos. And until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Like, I'm in shock, they just rang now. I know. I got the post.